I was getting my nails done when I received a text from my childhood friend Sophie. I was at the dealership earlier and saw your husband buy a Porsche for a young woman. Aren't you going to rush over and catch them? Not worth it. I still have a full body treatment after this, then Pilates, and at 3 I have an afternoon tea gathering. Who has the energy to bother with such trivial matters? In the 4th month after giving birth, I was finishing today's Pilates class at the yoga studio and took a deep breath as I faced myself in the mirror. The woman in the mirror had regained a taut waistline, only a slight trace of postpartum remained on her lower belly. The private trainer and nutritionist, who cost $100,000 a month, were indeed worth every penny. When I returned home, my mother was holding Liam on the balcony, basking in the sun. She brightened when she saw me enter. You've gotten your figure back nicely, it's almost impossible to tell you had a baby. I felt my still slightly loose belly, smiled, and said nothing. My mother's expression, however, grew increasingly complicated, as if she wanted to speak but held back. Alex came by this afternoon. She finally spoke, gently patting Liam in her arms. I crouched down to tidy the scattered toys, my voice calm. I heard you weren't home, you sat for a while and then left. Mother hesitated for a moment. You have really decided to divorce? I stood up, a faint smile at the corner of my mouth. Not divorcing. I'm moving back tomorrow. Mother was clearly taken aback, her brow knitting slightly. Why the sudden change of heart? I've come to terms with it. I took the sleeping Liam in my arms. It's better for everyone this way. The next day I returned to the house I shared with Alex, with the nanny and the 2 children. After settling the kids, I took a long essential oil bath. When I stepped out of the bathroom, Alex was already sitting on the bedroom sofa. Back? He put down his phone and looked at me with burning eyes. I walked straight to the vanity and began my nightly, ritual skincare routine. Alex came up behind me and draped his hands over my shoulders. Not mad anymore? I met his gaze in the mirror, a perfect arc lifting at the corner of my mouth. I've thought a lot these past few months. A successful man like you, how many aren't out having fun? It was my fault before for being immature and making a fuss. That won't happen again. I'll do my duty as a respectful wife. His fingers froze on my shoulder, a flash of puzzlement crossed his eyes. Go to sleep. We have to get up early tomorrow. I rose, subtly avoiding the embrace he reached for. You smell of smoke, go wash up first. Early the next morning, I met with my personal financial advisor. Miss Evelyn, are you sure you want to allocate all your assets this way? The advisor, wearing gold-rimmed glasses, pushed them up his nose. Under the new marriage law, these are all marital property. I've already consulted a lawyer, this is how it will be allocated. I handed the signing pen back to him. If anything happens to me, all my assets go to my mother and my child. At the notary office, the staff raised the same question, are you sure you don't want to leave a share to your spouse? I smiled faintly. My husband's net worth is at least 10 times mine, he couldn't care less about this little money. When I returned home, I found Alex already sitting in the living room. On a workday at this hour he would usually still be at the office. Why are you home today? I had an appointment with a client nearby this afternoon. His gaze dropped to the portfolio in my hand. What's this? I bought a few shops. I pulled out the contract and handed it to him. Can you check the location for me? Alex flipped through the papers, his frown slowly easing. Riverside New District? Good eye. The city government plans to focus development there next year, there's a lot of room for appreciation. That's good. I put the file away and turned to go upstairs. Evelyn. He suddenly called after me, has Sophie been in touch with you lately? I kept walking without pausing. Yes, she called not long ago. Why? My phone rang at that moment. It was a message from our eldest daughter's kindergarten group. The homeroom teacher announced a parent-child sports day next Friday and hoped all parents could attend. Alex's voice came from behind me. carrying an awkward hesitation. She hasn't told you anything unusual, has she? I already told them, I replied to the group message, eyes on my phone. Next Friday is the kindergarten event, are you free to come? Silence spread behind me. After a long moment, he finally spoke, of course. We'll go together. Really? Are both mom and dad really coming? My elder daughter Dora, at some point, was standing at the top of the stairs, clutching her little teddy bear, eyes shining. Mom won't be sick, will she? My heart clenched. Last year, during the Cold War with Alex, I had purposely missed Dora's Christmas performance. The image of her crying under the covers that night still fills me with guilt. This time Mom promises. I crouched down and hugged her tightly. Dad and Mom will definitely go together. Alex walked over too and gathered the two of us, mother and daughter, into his arms. Dad promises as well. Dora hopped up the stairs happily. Alex's hand was still on my shoulder, his voice low. Evelyn, about that girl, I want to explain. No need. I gently pulled his hand away. You're right, I should learn from my mom, letting go is better for everyone. He stood there stunned while I turned and went upstairs. Passing the study, I saw his new phone on the desk light up. The lock screen showed a text preview. Alex, I love the bracelet, tonight. I closed the door softly, the smile at the corner of my mouth deepening. After all, I had learned to solve problems with reason rather than emotion. My meeting with Alex felt exactly like a scene from a romantic drama. I had just returned from studying in Britain, and my father insisted I marry the son of a family our families had ties with, the Lees. But that Mr. Lee, polite on the surface, was a regular at nightclubs and changed girlfriends more often than his clothes. Evelyn, a marriage of convenience doesn't need feelings, my father told me then, puffing on a cigar. The Lees can help us open up the northern market. I smashed my father's favorite blue and white porcelain teacup. Make me marry that kind of playboy? Not unless I'm dead. 3 months later, I met Alex at a charity gala. He wore a well-tailored suit and stood in the corner sipping his wine quietly, completely different from those second-generation rich kids fawning over socialites. I asked for his contact information and spent almost half a year courting him before I finally won him over. My father was furious at first, until he went to inspect Alex's company in person. It was a small startup making smart home devices, modest in size but with promising prospects. After a few meetings, my father's stance softened, and he even introduced Alex to several important clients. After meeting Alex, my mother said to me with loaded meaning, "This kid is very clear-headed, he knows what he wants and what he must pay for it." At the time I thought that was a compliment, only now do I understand that my mother had seen through his nature long ago. My father was a self-made king of building materials who turned a small workshop into a publicly listed company over 30 years. After he had achieved success and fame, he, like most newly rich men, began keeping women on the side. When I was 10, I saw my father with my own eyes coming out of a hotel holding a young girl's arm. "Mom, why don't you get a divorce?" I once asked my mother angrily. She just calmly ironed the clothes. "Get divorced and you'll be giving those vixens a bargain?" At the time I thought my mother was weak, until I found flirtatious messages between Alex and his female assistant on his phone. I went hysterical wanting a divorce, but my mother stopped me. I was 5 months pregnant. "You think I'm you? Swallow my pride and grit my teeth for a lifetime?" I lashed out at my mother without thinking. Her raised hand never fell, she only sighed. "Divorce isn't about pride, living well is." But I had been trying so hard to make this marriage work. I ironed every one of Alex's shirts myself, I never missed his parents' birthdays. When I was pregnant with our second child and vomiting my head off, I still insisted on making him breakfast every morning. I naively believed that sincerity would be met with sincerity. Until the day I caught Alex in his office, in a state of undress with a female client. I smashed up his office, tore up our wedding photos, was sent to the hospital twice for emotional distress, and even threatened to have the baby aborted. Alex's parents flew back from Hainan overnight and, in front of me, beat him mercilessly in the hospital. After being beaten, Alex completely tore off his mask. In the hospital corridor he grabbed my wrist, each word stabbing into my heart like a knife. "Evelyn, I thought we had reached an agreement before we got married." His gaze was so cold it made me tremble. "I chose you because you're simple, filial, and suited to be a mother. Didn't you choose me because you saw my potential?" I stood there motionless, a buzzing in my ears. "I can give you a comfortable life, a respectable status, you only need to be the good wife." He let go of my hand, straightened his cuffs. "Why take the world's performances seriously? Doesn't your father have an illegitimate child too? Your mother is much wiser, can't you be like her?" In that moment, it felt as if I heard the sound of my heart shattering. The marriage I had treasured turned out, in his eyes, to be nothing more than an exchange of interests. Every shirt I ironed for him, every dinner I painstakingly prepared, counted for less than a coquettish glance from a business partner. "Marriage should be a win-win, not mutual torment," he said, glancing at me one last time. "If you keep making a scene like this, I'll have to reconsider the necessity of this relationship." I returned to the ward like a walking corpse, and the dam of my tears finally broke. When my mother pushed open the ward door, I was staring blankly out the window. Sunlight filtered through the blinds and cast mottled shadows across my face, unable to hide my swollen, tear-stained eyes and tangled hair. She said nothing, just sat lightly on the edge of the bed and pulled me into her arms. The familiar perfume mingled with the scent of disinfectant and slipped into my nostrils. I could no longer hold back and, like a child, sobbed on her shoulder. "Us, mother and daughter," my mother stroked my back, her voice feather-light, "we're just a little short on luck. But compared to those original wives driven to jump by mistresses, at least we still have money, and we still have the children." I lifted my head, searching her immaculate makeup for traces of resentment. My 50-year-old mother still shone, her Chanel suit outlined a well-maintained figure, giving no hint that she had a grandson already in kindergarten. "Mom, why don't you get a divorce?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Mother took a compact from her bag and, with an elegant motion, touched up my makeup. "You silly girl, why on earth should I hand over a life of silks and feasts to those wild women? Besides," she added, "if you really divorced him and a stepmother moved in, you, soft-hearted as you are, wouldn't you just be bullied to death?" I thought of Aunt. When Uncle had an affair back then, she made such a scene that everyone knew. Now, at only 45, her face was already lined with wrinkles, and her eyes always carried a sting of poisonous resentment. After the divorce, Uncle simply moved in with the other woman. My two cousins grew up amid Aunt's day-to-day grievance, and now they won't even answer Uncle's calls. "Your uncle came by last week to borrow money from your father." Mother put away the compact, her tone was as calm as if discussing the weather. "His newly married wife has had another child, and the company is on the verge of collapse. If you ask me, if your aunt had been a bit smarter, she'd still be a glamorous wealthy lady now." The ward door opened and nurse pushed in the treatment trolley. My mother rose and stepped aside, the jade bangle on her wrist struck the bedside table with a clear clink. It was the gift father brought back from an auction last year, worth 7 figures. That night, I stared at the ceiling for a long time. At dawn, after wiping my tears, I told my mother, "I'm leaving the hospital." That afternoon I completed the discharge paperwork and moved back to my parents' home to recuperate. Alex came every day after work with Dora to see me, and he never forgot to bring my favorite blueberry cheesecake. We tacitly agreed never to mention that day's argument again, as if that heart-wrenching clash had never occurred. When I was 7 months pregnant, my father had a car accident on the way to the airport. By the time I rushed to the hospital with my belly, my mother had already changed into a patient gown and was bathing him. My father, who had once dominated the business world, was now hooked up to tubes, lying on the ICU bed like a worn-out rag doll. "Let that vixen come and take care of him," I said through clenched teeth. My mother didn't look up. "Do you think this is a TV drama?" She deftly adjusted the foredrip. "Whoever's by your side at a time like this will be the one with a voice when the inheritance is divided." The other woman had indeed come once, wearing an ill-timed short skirt and high heels, crying in the corridor with mascara streaking down her face. Mother, in front of all the medical staff, drove her out of the hospital with a sharp slap. Every day I lugged my heavy body back and forth between home and the hospital. The baby kicked fiercely inside me, but I never plaintively asked Alex to rub my legs and pound my back like I did when I was carrying Dora. Father's condition waxed and waned, but Mother remained impeccably dressed at his bedside, her nail polish never once chipped. The miracle happened on a morning 3 weeks later. Father suddenly opened his eyes, and the first thing he wanted was to see a lawyer. When the sharply dressed lawyer Wang hurried over, Mother was elegantly peeling an apple, the skin coming off in one long ribbon that never broke. On the day of the C-section, my in-laws wept with joy outside the delivery room. Alex wanted to stay at the hospital with me, but I gently refused. Isn't the company about to sign that big smart home deal? I lay in the hospital bed, my tone calm. There are maternity nurses and nurses here, you focus on your work. He bent over and kissed my forehead. I caught the faint scent of cologne at his collar, not the brand I used. But at that moment my whole heart belonged to the newborn, and I didn't even have the strength to frown. Evelyn, thank you. Alex's voice was a little choked. I looked at the little one in the incubator and said softly, you're welcome. He paused, seeming unaccustomed to my sudden maturity. But quickly a familiar, satisfied look came into his eyes. Yes, which man wouldn't want a wife who doesn't make a fuss and behaves herself? When the nurse came to wheel me to the ward, I glanced one last time at Alex through the glass window. He was on the phone, a composed, business-appropriate smile at the corner of his mouth. Sunlight streamed through the corridor's floor-to-ceiling windows and fell across him, tracing an outline that felt increasingly unfamiliar. Now, as I stood in the walk-in closet sorting through the newly bought shop contract, the way Alex leaned in the doorframe, as if about to speak but holding back, reminded me of what my mother often said, the clever hunter often appears in the guise of the prey. Evelyn, about that parent-child event. He began hesitantly. I'll be there on time. I interrupted with a smile. Dora is looking forward to it. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but in the end only nodded and left. The phone lit up. It was a message from Sophie. Found out, that woman is their new PR director, named Tiffany. Attached were several intimate photos of Alex and that woman at the restaurant. I saved the photos and replied, no need to follow him for now. I put the phone down and looked out the window. The setting sun stained the clouds blood red, like my heart, wounded through but still beating. From today on, I will learn, as my mother did, to bury the pain beneath an elegant smile. Not for forgiveness, but for victory. On the day of the parent-child sports meet, I chose a white tracksuit. The clean cut outlined the well-recovered postpartum figure, paired with pearl studs and pale lipstick. It was sporty yet elegant. Alex, who hadn't come home all night, arrived at the kindergarten in a crisp suit, hurried and flustered, drawing the attention of many parents. Mom. Dad. Dora flew toward us like a little bird. You both really came. I crouched down and held her, feeling her warm body and the quick excitement of her heartbeat. In that moment, all schemes and defenses vanished. I was simply a mother who loved her daughter. Of course, Mom's word is final. After Dora ran off toward a group of friends, I turned to look at Alex. His suit, though expensive, was really unsuitable for a sports day. I packed sports clothes for you in the car. I pulled the car keys from my bag and handed them to him. Go change, there's a parent-child event coming up. Alex was taken aback for a moment. When he took the keys his fingers brushed my palm. You think of everything, he said. There was a tenderness in his voice I hadn't heard in a long time, one that reminded me of how he was when we first met. Of course. I smiled faintly. Go, don't keep Dora waiting too long. Watching his figure disappear toward the parking lot, I turned to look at Dora in the distance. She really did seem happy today, hopping and skipping. Remembering the last time I deliberately skipped her Christmas performance, a heavy wave of guilt flooded me. Soon, Alex changed his clothes and came back. At the sports meet, Alex, Dora, and I worked together seamlessly. We took first place in the three-legged race. In the parent-child relay, Dora ran faster than ever. Other parents looked at us with envy. Someone even joked, "You two make such a perfect couple, Dora is so lucky." Alex put his arm around my waist and smiled proudly at the compliments. I smiled back, as if we really were an exemplary married pair. Only I know how calm I felt inside when his hand touched me. No racing heart, no anticipation, just as if I were fulfilling a duty. After the sports day, Dora was so tired she fell asleep in the car. "Today was fun," Alex said as he drove. Dora smiled so sweetly. Yeah, she was really happy. I watched our daughter's peaceful sleeping face in the rearview mirror. From now on we should all take part in events like this together. He stole a glance at me. "Evelyn, you've changed." "How have I changed?" "You've become more mature." He chose his words carefully. "You used to always want me to spend all my time at home, but now you seem more independent." I gave a light laugh. People have to grow up, don't they? After getting home, Alex's phone wouldn't stop ringing. He glanced at the caller ID and his expression grew a little awkward. "There's some urgent matter at the office." Go, I said, picking up Dora and heading upstairs. "Remember to eat dinner." He froze for a moment, as if he hadn't expected me to be so straightforward. After he left, I called Sophie. "Tiffany is waiting for him tonight in room 1203 at the Fulewa Hotel." Sophie's voice was laced with anger. "Evelyn, are you really not going to do anything?" "Do what?" I said, coaxing Dora through her bath. "He's an adult, he knows what he's doing." "But..." "Sophie, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. And don't follow them around, do what you need to do." After hanging up, I sat with Dora and looked at picture books for a while. When she fell asleep, I went to the study. Alex's computer was still on. The screensaver was a family photo of the four of us. In the picture I was smiling with innocent abandon, my arm linked tightly through his. I stepped around the computer and pulled a few books on investing and personal finance from the bookshelf. Lately I'd been studying stocks and mutual funds and had contacted several reliable financial advisors. Mother was right, money is a woman's greatest confidence. It was 11 at night when Alex came back. I was doing a facial mask and heard his footsteps on the stairs. "Evelyn?" He pushed open the bedroom door and seemed surprised to see me. "Still up this late?" "I just put this on, 10 more minutes." I pointed to the white sheet on my face. "You go shower, I'll be done soon." He smelled faintly of perfume, not Tiffany, but that upscale room fragrance hotels keep on hand. I simply lay there calmly on the bed, as if I hadn't noticed anything. The water in the shower had just started when my phone buzzed. It was a bank transfer alert. Alex had just sent me $500,000. The note read, "Buy something nice for you and the kids." I stared at the message for a long time, then finally replied to him with one sentence, "Thanks, husband." Guilty men always like to use money to make up for their shortcomings, as if that could wash away their guilt. When Alex came out of the shower, I was just peeling off a face mask. "Your skin is really nice." He sat on the edge of the bed, tentatively reaching out to touch my face. I didn't pull away, but I didn't reciprocate either. I just said, "Tomorrow I'm going with Mom to look at houses." "Looking at houses?" "I want to buy a school district place for Dora." I got up to wash my face. "There are a few decent ones near Minghu Elementary." He followed me to the bathroom doorway. "Do you want me to come with you?" "No, you go on, you're busy." I told the mirror as I rubbed on hand cream. We women are more particular about looking at houses. In the mirror, Alex's expression was complicated. He probably hadn't expected that the wife who once wanted him to decide everything would now exclude him even from something as major as buying a house. But the next morning my mother called. "Your father's condition isn't good. The doctor says he has at most a few days left." Her voice on the phone was very calm, as if discussing today's weather. I immediately cancelled the house viewings and drove to the hospital. In the corridor outside the ICU, my mother sat in a chair leafing through a financial magazine, her makeup still immaculate. Seeing me arrive, she closed the magazine, her expression composed. He deteriorated suddenly last night, now he can only be kept alive by a ventilator. My mother rose, smoothing the hem of her Chanel suit. He wants to see you one last time. Through the ICU glass, I saw my father lying on the bed, skin and bones, tubes protruding from every part of him. The man who once ruled the business world like a typhoon now looked as fragile as a child. Can he still talk? Intermittent, but his consciousness is fairly clear. Mother glanced at her watch. You go in, I'll wait outside. The ward was very quiet, only the beeps of the monitors and the hum of the ventilator. Father sensed someone entering and slowly opened his eyes. When he saw me, a faint light flickered in them. Evelyn. His voice was so soft, so very soft, like a leaf falling in the wind. I sat down beside the bed and took his thin, bony hand. Dad, I'm here. Father struggled to adjust his breath, as if gathering strength to speak. Your mother told me about Alex. He said in broken phrases, pausing for breath after every few words. I already know. My hand tightened slightly, but my face remained calm. Dad, get some rest, don't speak. No. I have to tell you. My father gripped my hand with all his strength. Evelyn, men are like that, you have to learn to endure. Although these words were the same as what my mother had said, they still made my heart sink instantly. Even in the last moments of his life, this man still never thought of doing right by me, his daughter. Alex won't easily divorce you. Father kept speaking, a familiar shrewdness in his eyes. When it comes to splitting the assets, he certainly won't be happy, as long as he doesn't make a scene at home, just turn a blind eye. I listened quietly, my heart utterly calm. If it had been before, I would have found it absurd. But after the conversation Mom and I had, I understood, this was actually the best way. As long as the surface of respectability was maintained, you could exchange the smallest cost for the greatest benefit. Look at your mother, how well she's lived all these years. Father's voice grew weaker and weaker. She never made a fuss with me, she had what she should, she enjoyed what she should. Dad. I interrupted him softly. You're tired. Rest for a bit. But my father, as if determined to say everything he still had on his mind, continued in a weak voice, the company shares. I arranged them long ago, you and your mother each have a portion, with money, you'll have leverage, remember what your father says, endure it and it will pass. After saying this, he seemed to have used up every last bit of strength, closed his eyes, and fell into a deep sleep. I sat in the ward for a long time, watching the waves on the monitor rise and fall, my heart full of conflicting emotions. This was my father. A man who maneuvered brilliantly in the marketplace but utterly failed at home. The last lesson he taught me turned out to be how to endure in an unfaithful marriage. I remember when I was little, my father took me to his company and proudly introduced me to his employees as his daughter. Back then I thought my father was the most remarkable man in the world. Only now do I understand that he was nothing but a coward. A coward who didn't even dare to face the consequences of his own actions. When I left the ward, my mother was talking with the doctor about the follow-up arrangements. Her voice was still calm, her thoughts organized, as if she were handling an ordinary business matter. Evelyn, what did your father tell you? My mother asked. I looked at her, this woman who remained graceful and composed even after my father's years of infidelity. He told me to be like you. Mother gave a short, amused laugh. Like me in what? Swallowing your pride? He said all men are like that I should endure. My mother's expression went cold in an instant, a flash of disgust I had never seen crossing her eyes. Evelyn, you must remember one thing. She turned to face me, her tone hardening. My so-called endurance over the years wasn't born of love, but of calculation. I stopped loving your father long ago, from the moment he cheated. Mother's voice was light, but each word was clear. The reason I didn't divorce him was because I was waiting for the most advantageous moment. And now the moment has come. Mother looked toward the ICU. He's about to die. I've had the will changed, control of the company will soon fall into my hands. Those young vixens will get nothing, and I will be the true winner. Early the next morning, my father passed away. I was in the kitchen making breakfast for Dora when I received the call from the hospital. I put the phone down calmly and kept slicing fruit. "Grandpa's gone," I said to Dora, who was eating breakfast. Dora put down her spoon, blinked her big eyes and asked, "Where did Grandpa go?" "He went very, very far away. He'll never come back." Dora nodded as if she half understood, then went on eating her breakfast. After she finished, I changed clothes and headed to the hospital. Alex arrived at the hospital soon after I called him. He was wearing the clothes I had ironed for him that morning. His hair was a little messy from running. "Evelyn, my condolences." He tried to reach out to hug me, but I deftly avoided him. "Thank you, I'm fine." In the days that followed, my mother and I were busy handling the funeral arrangements. During that time, a young woman in a black dress appeared in the morning hall. She looked about 28 or 29, pretty in a delicate way, her eyes red and swollen from crying. This must have been the last mistress of my father. She held a bouquet of white chrysanthemums and tried to approach my father's portrait, but my mother stopped her. "Sorry, this is the family area." My mother's voice was polite, but her stance was firm. I am." The woman tried to explain. "I know who you are," the mother interrupted her, "but here, you are nothing." The woman froze, tears welling even more fiercely in her eyes. "If you want one last look at him, I can give you 5 minutes, the mother glanced at her watch. "Go on." The woman nodded gratefully and walked over to the portrait to offer a bouquet. 5 minutes later, she wiped her tears and slipped away quietly. From beginning to end, she hadn't uttered another word. Watching her retreating figure, I suddenly thought of Tiffany. If one day Alex were to die, would Tiffany also be like that woman, only able to sneak in for one last look? The thought struck me as somewhat absurd. My father's funeral was conducted with great ceremony. Friends from political and business circles attended, and wreaths filled the entire morning hall. My mother wore an impeccable black suit and received condolences from all sides, her manners so refined it was as if she were attending an upscale cocktail party. Mrs. Victoria is truly strong to handle such a calamity with such thoroughness. Richard is blessed to have married such a fine wife. Listening to these praises, I looked at my mother. Her face bore just the right amount of sorrow, neither ostentatious nor lacking in dignity. This is how a clever woman should appear. On the 3rd day after the funeral, we went to the law firm. Lawyer Wang carefully explained my father's will. As my mother had anticipated, 60% of the company's shares went to her, I received 30%, and the remaining 10% was given to my half-brother whom I had never met. In addition, father left me 2 properties and a sum of cash. Mrs. Victoria, congratulations on officially becoming the controlling shareholder of Lin Building Materials. Lawyer Wang took off his glasses. According to the company's bylaws, you may now assume the position of chairman. My mother signed her name with composure. Thank you, Lawyer Wang, for all your hard work over the years. I put down my pen and looked at my mother. Mom, I'm not signing. Lawyer Wang was taken aback for a moment. Miss Evelyn, this is your lawful inheritance. I'm going to transfer these shares and the property to my mother. My tone was very calm. Do the transfer paperwork now. Mother looked at me intently, a glimmer of relief passing through her eyes. Evelyn, are you sure you've thought this through? Yes. I nodded. Under the new marriage law, what I inherit will become marital property. If there is a divorce in the future, Alex could take half. Lawyer Wang pushed up his glasses. But Miss Evelyn, your marriage is stable now. Sir, I cut him off, there are no relationships in this world that are forever stable. I'm just trying to leave myself an escape route. My mother chuckled beside me. My daughter is right. Lawyer Wang, do as she says. An hour later, all the paperwork was done. When we stepped out of the law firm, the sun was just right. Mother put on her sunglasses, looking radiant. Evelyn, starting today, the 2 of us finally have real backing. Mom, what do you plan to do with the company? First study the people, then slowly clean up the mess your father left. There was a firmness in her voice I had never heard before. None of the old managers who played along with your father over the years can stay. Suddenly I understood why my mother had endured by my father's side for so many years. She wasn't weak, she had been waiting. Waiting for a chance to turn everything around. The first month after my father's death, my life underwent a subtle change. My mother officially took over the company and began sweeping reforms with decisive force. As for me, I started to frequent all kinds of business occasions. Evelyn, there's an investment salon tomorrow afternoon, you'll come with me, my mother said on the phone. It's time you met some real business elites. I put down the financial report I had been reading. All right, Mom. After hanging up, I looked toward Alex, who was in the living room playing with the children. Lately he had been coming home noticeably more often, probably because, after his father's death, he felt he should spend more time with me. But the irony was that I no longer needed his company. I'm going out tomorrow afternoon. I closed the file in my hands. Can you stay home and look after Dora? If you can't, I'll call the nanny. Alex looked up, a little surprised. Where are you going? I'm going to a business event with my mother, I said naturally. The company needs hands right now, and Mom hopes I can help. His brow tightened slightly. Evelyn, can't your mom handle the company's affairs on her own? She can, but she wants me to learn more. I stood and tidied the scattered toys. I can't always be a housewife who knows nothing, can I? Alex put Liam down from his arms and came over. I think you're fine the way you are now. What kind? A dutiful wife and good mother, graceful and intellectual. He reached out to wrap his arm around my waist. Why work so hard? I deftly slipped away from his hand and smiled. Alex, you don't expect your wife to be a vase that only spends money, do you? The next day's investment salon was held at a 5-star hotel downtown. I wore a Chanel suit paired with the emerald earrings my mother had given me, sober yet not lacking in poise. Today everyone who came is an elite from various fields. My mother reminded me in the car, remember, listen more and speak less, but when it's time to take a stand, be resolute. About 30 people showed up at the salon, mostly successful figures over 40. I followed my mother through the different social circles and quickly blended in. Chairman Victoria's daughter is truly outstanding, praised a real estate boss, so young and already so insightful. I had just shared a few views on property investment, and it clearly made a good impression on those present. You're flattering me. I raised my glass. I still need to learn a lot from my seniors. In the 3 months after the salon, my life changed completely. By day I followed my mother to learn company management. By night I came home to be with the child, my schedule packed tight. Alex wanted to talk to me more, but I always had an excuse to decline. Evelyn, aren't you overworking lately? That evening Alex finally couldn't hold it in. I was in the study sorting out the investment proposal. Without looking up I said, I'm fine, I'm used to it. You've changed. He said it from behind me, his voice carrying an emotion I couldn't name. What's changed? I closed the file and turned to look at him. You used to revolve around me all the time, and now. He paused. Now it seems like I'm dispensable in your life. I let out a light laugh. Alex, isn't this what you've always wanted? A wife who's not clingy and doesn't make a fuss? He was stunned, as if he hadn't expected me to be so blunt. Besides, I stood up and straightened the papers on the desk. Isn't this better? I don't check your phone, I don't track you, I don't make a scene if you're with another woman. You can freely see Tiffany, and I can focus on my own things. Alex's expression changed in an instant. You know Tiffany? Of course I do. I walked to the bookshelf, my back to him. The new PR director, 26, decent figure, you two have been together for almost half a year, right? There was the sound of a chair being pushed back behind me. Evelyn, let me explain. Explain what? I turned around, a faint smile on my face. Explain why you chose her? Or explain how you two met. Alex opened his mouth but couldn't find the words. None of it really matters, I said, stepping in front of him. The important thing is, aren't our lives arranged pretty well now? You have your Tiffany, I have my career. The children have a complete family, you have a dutiful wife, I have a successful husband. Everyone keeps their dignity. But you don't love me anymore. His voice was very low, as if talking to himself. Love? I thought carefully about the word. Alex, have you forgotten what you said? He stared at me blankly, as if meeting me for the first time. You said you chose me because I was obedient and filial, suitable to be a mother. My tone was very calm. You give me a respectable life with your status and position, I give you a stable rear with my gentleness and domestic virtue. Wasn't that the agreement we implicitly made? And now our deal is even more equal. I went on. I'm no longer that little woman who only knows how to depend on you. I have my own career, my own worth. You don't have to pretend to be a devoted husband anymore, you can openly enjoy your freedom. Alex suddenly stepped forward and grabbed my wrist tightly. What if I said I want things to go back to the way they were? I looked at him, my eyes devoid of any ripple. Before? Which before? The before you cheated? I can break it off with Tiffany. His voice was a little hurried. We can start over, okay? I gently wrenched my hand free and turned toward the door. Alex, adults shouldn't always be thinking about starting over. Once you choose this path, you have to see it through. What do you mean? What I mean is, we keep living the way we do now. I stopped in the doorway. You continue with your career and your romances, I continue with my growth and transformation. The children keep growing up in an intact family, and we keep playing the loving couple in front of outsiders. But I will not love you anymore. After I finished speaking, I walked out of the study without looking back. Heavy sighs came from behind me, but my steps never faltered. In the living room, Dora and Liam were already asleep, and the nanny was quietly picking up toys. Madam, would you like me to carry the little master back to his room? No, let them sleep here for a while. I stroked Dora's hair gently. You go and rest first. After the nanny left, I sat on the sofa watching the two sleeping children. This is my life now. No more sweeping, passionate love, no more heart-wrenching pain. Only calm calculation and rational choices remain. Perhaps such a life would have seemed pitiable to the me of old, but to the me now, this is the best arrangement. My phone buzzed once, it was a message from my mother, board meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m., remember to be on time. I replied okay, then put the phone down, picked up Liam, and headed upstairs. From now on, this is the kind of relationship Alex and I have, neither a loving married couple nor strangers, but two adults who choose to cooperate for their own interests. Perhaps this ending isn't very romantic, but at least it's realistic. 3 years later. I stood on the stage at the company's annual meeting, receiving applause from the audience. As CEO of Lynn's Building Materials, I had just announced the good news that the company's profits had grown by 30% this year. In the audience, Alex sat in the front row of the guests, clapping for me with a mannerly smile on his face. The woman sitting beside him wasn't Tiffany, she had been transferred to a branch office a year ago. We caught each other's eye briefly, Alex's gaze held eager admiration, while mine was only neutral. Dora was already in 2nd grade, and Liam had begun to babble. They had a mother who was successful in her career and a gentle, attentive father, from the outside, a perfect family. As for Alex and me, we hadn't shared a bed for a long time. But we are still husband and wife, still attend our child's parent-teacher meetings together, still appear hand in hand at important social events. Such a life may not be thrilling, but it is stable enough. And stability is what I want most right now. Mother was right, a wise woman never solves problems with emotion. In the end, we won everything we wanted in our own way.